So Jesus is in the boat with his disciples, and the storm rises, and the waves are crashing against the boat, and the water's slopping in, and they are actually afraid they are going to die. And apparently those who know the weather conditions in Israel say this is quite plausible, that storms can suddenly sweep in on the Sea of Galilee like that. And they are terrified. And what makes things worse is Jesus is asleep. And preachers through the ages have, I am sure, drawn that connection that doesn't it sometimes feel like that in your life? There are times when the storms of life sweep in and the waves are crashing into our frail boat and we feel like we're going to drown, and Jesus seems to be asleep. Can you empathize with that? But then, you heard the reading, you probably know the story already. The disciples wake him, and with a word, Jesus calms the storm, and all is peaceful and tranquil and calm. It is awesome. And in Mark's Gospel, the point is really to bring out, who is Jesus? That's the final question that the disciples ask. Who is this? And it's part of a series of little episodes that Mark tells us to bring out, this Jesus is no ordinary rabbi. This is not just some teacher like other teachers, some preacher and healer like other preachers and healers. This is God come into our world. This is his power. But as Christians, wouldn't we love that to be the case in our life? That when the storms of life are raging, when whatever it is crashes into our life and we think, I cannot cope with this, I am going under, Jesus speaks a word and it just goes away. And suddenly there is peace and calm and everything is wonderful and lovely. And it's not like that. So why does Jesus do this here? Why doesn't he do it for us on a regular basis? Well, the thing is, when we read a story in the Bible, when we read an incident, an episode like this, we need to read it in the context of the whole of Jesus' ministry and in the whole of the New Testament. And it is pretty obvious when you reflect on our first reading, which Chris read to us, that it ain't that simple, and it was never that simple. Paul says, as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way, in great endurance, in troubles, hardships and distresses, in beatings, imprisonments and riots, in hard work, sleepless nights and hunger. Don't complain to Paul that my life is a bit tricky. This was his daily diet as an apostle, as a follower of Jesus. This is what happened to him. The storms of life did not go away. In fact, it was because he was a Christian, it was because he was a preacher that all these things were happening to him. So it's always been that way. Incidentally, this is I'm meeting the candidate for St. Peter's Peacham tomorrow. I'm not part of their interview, but they're going on to interview. And I wonder if in your CV to be a priest, if this is what you'd put. I just like to commend myself. I've been in trouble, I've been in hardship, I've been in distress, I've been beaten, I've been imprisoned, I've been in riots. I mean, you'd expect Paul to say, I've planted so many churches, I've visited so many countries, I've converted so many people. But no, he says, this is my life as an apostle. Why? Because he's following Jesus. And what happened to Jesus? Well, the storm of his life did not go all calm and peaceful. He was, as you know, arrested and falsely accused and unjustly condemned and cruelly killed on a Roman cross, innocent though he was. So you just have to look at Jesus' life to realize, actually, God doesn't promise to take the tough stuff away. In fact, if you are following Jesus in order to get peace and tranquility in your life, well, you're following the wrong person. You've got to think again. Jesus actually warned us, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must forget about yourself, take up your cross and follow me. And in first century Palestine, take up your cross would be understood literally. Not as, oh, I've got a bad back, it's the cross I have to bear. This is tough. This is reality. So, what then is the point of Jesus stilling the storm? What difference does it make? Okay, he did it then once, he's never going to do it again. I can expect no comfort, no encouragement, no hope from that story. Well, no. Actually, there is comfort and hope and encouragement to be derived from it. Because look what Jesus says. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Jesus says what you need in the storm is trust. What you need in the storm is peace instead of fear. That's what he had. That's how he could sleep in the boat in the middle of the storm. And what he wants to give us is a confidence in God, an assurance of God's presence, an inner peace in the storms of life. That's what he promises. Not protection from the storms, but peace in the storm. The promise of his presence with us in the boat as the waves crash in. That he will be with us and that will make all the difference. That's what he's promising us. That's what the disciples found. And that's what Paul goes on to say. Again in our reading. Dying and yet we live on. Beaten and yet not killed. Sorrowful yet always rejoicing. Poor yet making many rich. Having nothing and yet possessing everything. He says having Jesus with me in the storm makes all the difference. All the difference. And it can for you as well. That's his point. I want to give you two examples. First one is my colleague from St Paul's, the Associate Minister, I think she's called, Fiona DeQuitt, with whom I worked for all the years that I was there. And Fiona's eldest son died of cancer, aged just 26, in August 2009. And through his last long illness, so many people said, it's not fair. Such a lovely person, such a godly person. It's not fair. Why should she go through this? But as a Christian, we are not immune from the storms of life. They crash on our lives just as much as they do on other people's. But through that time, through Andy's illness and through her bereavement, Fiona kept her faith in God. And so she came to church. She didn't lead or preach anymore. She came to church and she sat at the side, and she often cried all the way through the service. But she knew God was with her. And we could see that she knew God was with her. And we could see the difference that it made, that she knew that Jesus was in the boat in the middle of the storm with her. And that experience has forever changed her and forever marked her and will do so. But she knows now, as she knew then, as we saw then, what a difference it makes that Jesus is in the boat with her. And then last Tuesday week, I shared at the Tuesday morning service on the 8th of June the story of Pippa's friends, Mike and Hope Sonnenschein. Pippa, my daughter, was in Haiti for several months and became friends with Mike and Hope, who lived nearby. She often went to their house and enjoyed spending time with them, relaxing with them. And they're US missionaries. They have worked in Haiti for several years now. They're working with the poorest of the poor. They were working with children, they're now working with communities to try and help people to have better chances in life, and particularly during this pandemic, to survive and to thrive. On the 27th of May, Mike was shot in an attempted robbery on the streets of Haiti. This is him being evacuated out of Haiti, paralysed from the waist down. The bullets could not be removed and are still in his body. And I shared on that Tuesday Hope's remarkable messages of trust and hope and faith in the storms that they are going through, including her prayer for the gunman who had shot Mike and who fled immediately afterwards. And their faith is like a beacon in the darkness of this world. I mean, it's a grim and terrible place, and what Mike has gone through is appalling. But they went as missionaries to serve. They went as missionaries knowing that they're going to a dangerous and risky place. They went to serve Jesus and to serve the poor. They are not immune from the storms of life, and they know that. But I want to share with you what Hope has shared on Facebook and just encourage you with the difference that it makes that Jesus is in the boat with us. So for those of you who were there on the Tuesday, this brings the story a little more up to date. So 2 days after I spoke, on the 10th of June, he was flown from the hospital where he was in Florida to Atlanta, to a rehab centre, where they're working with him to try and bring some mobility back to his lower limbs and to help him build his strength in his upper body too. She says this: God has shown up so many times and in so many different ways. The day nurse today has been on many mission trips to Haiti, and Mike's pulmonary doctor has been on mission trips to Emmaus University, which is just down the road from us. He's friends with a family we met that used to serve there. To top it off, Mike's night nurse is Haitian. I love how God gives you even the smallest reminders of his presence. And this night nurse and some other Haitian nurses have been bringing him Haitian food treats to eat to encourage him. And they see this little sign that God is with them in this storm. On Friday, she posted this picture. In the middle of pain and disappointment and suffering, it is faith that whispers, "This isn't permanent." As Christians, we go through the storms of life, but Jesus is with us in the storm, and that makes all the difference. And then this morning I had to update my sermon because she posted overnight, and this is what she wrote. Never doubt the power of prayer, ever. Each of your prayers are heard by our loving Father, every single one, and he answers them perfectly. That doesn't always mean they'll be answered the way we expect it, or even want it to be. But it's always for our good. I know this because God has shown me the importance of prayer and trust in him. There's nothing that's too small to escape his notice, and nothing too big for him to handle. Prayer changes things. Mainly it changes you in the best of ways. Thank you for spending time with our Heavenly Father in prayer for us. He's heard your prayers and is at work. I hope you're all as blessed as we are, spending time in his presence in prayer. That's the difference that knowing Jesus is with you in the boat makes. That is, like the disciples, the difference it makes, knowing Jesus is with you in the storm. That's the key. We can trust him, and he'll give us peace. He can give us peace. Jesus' words in John 16:33 sum it all up for me. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. We will face the storms of life, and you all know that. You've experienced the storms of life in different ways. I look around and see many of you, and I know the storms you've been facing in recent months over this past year. Not only COVID, but worse. But faith is an insurance policy. Sometimes you hear people say that and you think, what? But actually, just think for a moment what an insurance policy actually does. An insurance policy does not stop you having an accident or your house being struck by lightning or whatever may happen. But your insurance policy says, even if that does happen, which it may, someone is with you. You are promised support. You are helped. We'll be there for you. You're covered. You're not protected from the storms. Your insurance policy, this might come as a shock to you, but your insurance policy doesn't cover your house against being struck by lightning. It's an act of God, they say. You know, churches are insured against acts of God. Irony. But what your insurance policy does is says, we're with you. We've got it. If it happens, you're covered. Jesus is with us in the boat, and it doesn't stop the storms coming. But he says, I'm with you. We've got this. Be at peace. Sleep, for I am with you. Take heart. I have overcome the world. Let's just be quiet for a moment and bow our heads. And I want to pray that you know the truth and the power and the life-changing difference of those words. Holy Spirit, come, I pray, and speak your truth into our hearts. Speak your peace into our hearts, especially those of us that are in the storms of life and feel our boat is about to go down. Speak your peace, I pray.